till your big wheel come. Well, I do more rolling than your big wheel ever done. Let me roll with you, baby. 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 the ace so hard to play. When the deal goes down, baby, and the ace so hard to play. Then you hit the wrong card, baby, and you then throw your hand away.
I'm back at the shop with the Dunstall Norton. Another excellent ride, the 5th time that I've had this bike out. Once a year for the last 5 years. And every time this bike impressed me how well it works. Smooth and powerful. This time out, I took it up to 6,000 RPM on the C to Die highway a couple of times. But when you're approaching 100 miles an hour, you can't do that in this part of the world. You get in big trouble. And I'm still breaking in this engine because I put 100 miles every time I've taken this bike out. So this bike from new, I have now put 500 miles on it. 479. Excellent miles. I am so pleased with this Dunstall Norton. I have done a lot of very creative work on this motor on this bike. So let's take a closer look at what's going on here. And then I'm going to prepare it for storage because this bike will not be ridden for at least 6 more months till next year. So let's start with the front end here. This huge fairing. I bought all this package at the same time. The fairing, the front fender, the tank, the tailpiece, and the seat. Bought it all for very reasonable from British import motorcycles about 10 years ago. And this is all my painting. This is Imron on this. I wasn't trying to get a showstopper gloss finish, just a factory type finish, your basic shiny red finish. And Imron, if anyone knows, is an excellent paint. So let's start with the tricky motor. This bike is a Dunstall Norton because it has some parts that a lot of other so-called Dunstall Nortons don't have. Let's start with the heart of the matter. These Dunstall barrels, some original 810cc alloy barrels. Now Dunstall made a huge mistake on these barrels. The sleeves, the wall thickness, too thin. Bolt deflection, when you're torquing the head bolts, can cause a thin sleeve to distort as the bolt gets tightened up. Now these barrels here, what I've done here is re-sleeve these to 750. Sleeve manufacturers, some won't build you a sleeve that's less than 332 thick wall thickness. That's the minimum wall thickness. These are a little bit thicker than 332. Standard 750. So there's plenty of pistons to choose from. Though I built this motor that this motor will outlast you unless you're totally incompetent. So these Dunstall barrels, I've also changed the head bolts. I've run studs. Studs that take up the entire length of the thread. Much more secure than threading bolts and reefing on bolts as they thread into the barrel. When the studs are already mounted in the barrel and they take up the full thread cavity, that's superior to bolts. So I have studs replacing the bolts on this head wherever I could. Now this head also has been tricked out. I have done a dual squish combustion chamber, Cosworth style dual squish combustion chamber. Here's what the inside of the Dunstall head looks like. Dual squish, Cosworth style combustion chambers. I have it on 2 of my bikes. And here is the Dunstall cam, using the rare Dunstall needle bearing oil fed cam. You can see the hole there, right there. All the lobes have a hole in them, every one of them, just before lift. Super rare cam, running on needle bearings. A65 lifters. This is a shot of my other motor. In the Dunstall, I have Dunstall lifters, perfect condition, which I radiused perfectly, and it's working perfectly. So anyway, that's the inside of the Dunstall head there. Dual squish. And here's the oil-fed cam on needle bearings. Same as I have in my other bike. Same setup. Super rare. Now, Dunstall made a huge mistake when he built this oil-fed cam. The seal he supplied with it was totally inadequate for the job. It wasn't even a sprung seal. When you put it in the cavity here, you take the bushing out. This is run on needle bearings, this cam. You take out the bushing to install the needles and you put in your oil seal. The oil seal did not even connect with the end of the camshaft. That's how poorly it was designed. And my friend's bike 40 years ago certainly proved that as he wet sumped. So what I have done on both bikes that I have this on is, you see this large nut here, external oil seal. I extended the cam with a protruding spigot, and now I unscrew this, and there's the seal. You can change it. So this is metered. This is metered to not let that much oil out, because a lot of oil pressure can escape out of that oil feed situation on this engine. So that dot there designates the difference between that bolt and the ones on the top end, on the head. That's metered down to a 16th hole instead of the about 332 it is on the top end. So every lobe gets oil on this. Beautiful. Designed to last a lifetime. Run on needle bearings. Working perfectly. The faster you spin this motor, the stays quiet. It just goes faster. No more noise. Just faster speed. Here's one of my oil filter systems here. The oil filter before it goes into the crank. And I also have the filter on the return. The factory filter on the return, which you can see right there, I do believe. The typical stock place. So this motor is built to stay together for a long time. Now the head has got kibble white stainless valves, kibble white valve train, springs, and collars, which are genius, excellent engineering by Kibble White, allowing larger valve springs. They're factory size valves, stainless, and the porting on this head is not outrageous. I just clean up intake ports. I do not hog them out. The port to valve relationship, size relationship, is pretty well maxed out on a Norton. They don't have very big valves. So I keep the intake manifold 30 millimeter. These are 30 millimeter carburetors on here. I believe in getting good performance with as little fuel as possible, not wasting fuel. And anyone knows 32 millimeter carburetors, the last bit of throttle to full throttle virtually does nothing on a Norton. And if you try to tune it so you do get performance on the top end, your low end will run so rich you won't be able to tolerate it. They're an imperfect instrument, the amyl concentric. So this is tuned to go very well, thank you, with the Dunstall cam, which is just a little more than a combat cam. The dual squish Cosworth style combustion chambers. The 2-into-1 interference Dunstall exhaust. Dunstall styled exhaust, because what you're looking at is my own work. Particularly back here on this part of it. If you check this elaborate bit of exhaust work here, where I've made this out of various U-bends, mandrel bends, and then into the Dunstall muffler. Yes, the rare Dunstall power megaphones. So Dunstall exhaust runs a little differently. It's just sort of crude and hangs down straight, sort of. So this fancy U-bend stuff is much more attractive. Plus what I run here is a bracketing, which Dunstall doesn't use. You see this strap here welded to the pipe, and then here's exhaust grommeting supporting this pipe. Dunstall's always loosen off here. They have a clamp thing. So I have it one piece, no clamp, no joint here. It's a one-piece pipe all the way to this. So don't go over any speed bumps and smash it in the front here. That's the stock Dunstall clearance. Pretty low, but a lot of things are like that these days. So this transmission, smooth as silk, quiet, perfect. Everything on this bike is perfect. And of course we have all the factory insignia nuts and bolts all matching up wherever available, ever possible. Look at that, there's the little zeros on the top of the shock nut there. You see those little stamped in zeros? You betcha. Oh, polished stainless where it's appropriate. There's a bit there. Factory stuff here, no polished stainless on this motor. Of course, all the CAD's done, everything's minted out, the usual restoration values here. Yes, and pleased to say my Dunstall styled exhaust work. I've been doing exhaust systems for almost 5 decades, and this is working perfectly. So, what else do you need to know about the motor? Oil-fed cam, Cosworth-style combustion chambers, dual oil filters. That one's on the intake side. Before it goes into the crank, my own conception, only at Redline. There is someone imitating that using a return filter just bolted on, ridiculous. This is a total different inside the timing cover to make this work. But this imitation one is on the return line and it doesn't have anything to do with inside here. This is on the intake line before it goes in the filter. Only 3 British bikes ever did that. Velocette, Vincent, and Triple Trouble. Filter the oil before it goes in the crank. So I said, oh yeah, my bikes, I've done this about on 10 bikes, this oil filter system here. On about 10 bikes. And the squish combustion chambers, I've done on about 9 Nortons to count now. My only mine Cosworth style, everything else single squish. Now here's the Dunstall genuine rear sets here, and this is the particular shifter that's cast, very rare to find apparently, freshly re-chromed and mint of course. Yeah, and once again our factory oil filter on the return. Okay, let's get that seat off, shall we? The usual seat knobs. Get the job done. This seat has got the wiring harness attached to it, so when you take it off, you just gently place it down on the ground, like that. No problem here. Move it back there. Nice. Now, what's different about this all is I have the fender. The Dunstall actually wants you to take the fender off and not use it. You can see here I have a 1/4 inch rubber strap. So this is a 1/4 inch away from the seat hoop. It's usually right against it. Now if you see what I've done here, here's the bumpers. That sits on the frame, right there and right there. Those bumpers. Usually, what Dunstall wants is a big piece of foam shoved in here, sitting on the frame. That's what you'll usually see. So here we have a polished, chrome-plated bracket. These stainless brackets with these bumpers. So this is a much cleaner, sensible, secure setup than this cramming foam rubber in there. And there's our LED signal lights. Very nice. And this fiberglass tailpiece, mint. Never been wanked on, never been broken or repaired. Beautiful. So, There we go. Good, right? We're good. Always take that extra minute to make sure we're good, because one scratch is worth $1,000 on this bike. Alrighty, here we go. Tank off. Yeah, baby. Excellent. And let's take a look what's happening under the old tank. Well, we got it just as we left it. Stock Norton. Many ways to lay out cables and wiring. They should never be interacting with each other. Cables should have their own route. Wiring should have its own route, not a mess of spaghetti. Now you see, I love running these Goosey boots on all my bikes, my collection, these Goosey carb boots. And here, I don't know if I did that or those came like that. An extra layer of protection. And you see how I have this 2-into-1 sitting here on its own. So when I turn this throttle, there is no movement, flexing, pulling this way or that way. You can't. This junction box, see, these are all tied. Everything is secure. You want to keep your slides perfectly equal. This has to be on a perfect route and perfectly secure. Otherwise, your slides can pull up unevenly as they go up if everything's having to correct itself as it's getting there. Now, of course, when the single part of it here, it doesn't matter. That can do anything you want. But once it gets to the double thing, perfection in the cable routing is required. Here's another thing I do these days, is use this Teflon with stainless outer for the top end oiler with these standard little crimp down things. This is so easy to do, so inexpensive, and much cleaner and attractive than that huge fittings and nuts they sell to do the same thing with the same type of line. I have this on all my bikes except one or two, which is, hey, the old air brake line is working fine, 50 cents a foot. Though they were making Mexican stuff about 10 years ago, that was absolute garbage. And that's when I switched over to this, which is much superior product regardless. And you see how that works. We're going over to here and then teeing off down to the cam, the oil-fed cam. Once again, this bolt metered. The hole is half the size of the hole of this bolt. So look at this, eh? 500 miles in this motor. Now you want to see how your motor's working? What you do, or if it's leaking oil on a Norton, after a hot highway ride, like I just had this on, up to 6,000 on the sea to die, look at that, not one speck of oil, not one. All we're seeing is dust. That's all you want to see on the head gasket. Dust. And the base gasket, of course. But it appears our attack drive has got a little action going on. I have to deal with that. Yes, so I'm totally pleased. This bike is such a sweetheart. The more you turn the throttle, the faster it goes. No complaining, no waiting, no moaning, no groaning, no noises, just going. I love it. I'm not a fairing guy. I'm not a clip-on, low bars guy. I'm a sit-up and beg guy. But this fairing, this huge fairing, really works. You can feel it working on the highway. It cuts through everything. Cuts through the air like in a strange way I never felt before, because I'm not a fairing guy. I read that a fairing of this size is good for 8 miles an hour, more top end, than the exact same bike without it. Small fairings, like this one here, don't really do much except keep the bugs off you. But this thing here, this large fairing, you can out top end your buddy just because you have this large fairing on here. And you can really feel it. This thing just goes like magic. I love it. Someone is going to get a great Norton. This bike is built, I built it to be sold. So it's first class all the way. Every aspect of it is new perfection, and it works like it. Built to be sold. So let's carry on with this storage preparation. Now, before I just filmed this bike, before I filmed this bike and took it out on this last recent 100 miles, I already retorqued the head, which I had done before. It's totally solid. Checked the tappets exactly where I left them, and changed the oil and filter. So I'm not going to be dealing with that. That is going to work well. Good for 2,000 miles, actually. But we are going to get the gasoline out of this thing. Use your throttle clutch and keep these carburetors full open for a week. Why not? They're full open. Why? We want the needles out of the needle jet. Otherwise they'll gum up. The needle jet, it's got a little pilot hole. You leave that needle with fuel on it in there, it's going to leave residue and a chance of gumming up the needle, gumming up the jet. You don't want that. So, full throttle, needle out of the jet. Okay, so we'll be leaving that, well, for a couple of days at least, till all that fuel is dripped out and evaporated. And then when it is, you put your carburetor drain plugs back in real tight. Metal drain plugs, real tight. No gaskets. No falling off. Moving right along. Let's put this seat back on before we smash it to bits. And how that works is simply lay this down in there, line up the slots with the brackets. There you go. Let that sit on there. Now let's drain the gasoline out of there. And then we're going to change the reservoir fluid. Change this once a year. Then you don't have to go in there. It'll keep that healthy. You have to change this once a year. Storage, using, whatever you're doing, you change it once a year. Okay, back to checking out this bike, the Dunstall fender. What's going on here? This is a laminated 2 layers of stainless, polished stainless here. Countersunk bolts on the inside. Usually these are hose clamped to the slider. Crude as hell. What? Hose clamped to the slider. That's a race bike for you. No, this is bolted. 2 countersunk 3/16, and you can see there's 1 nut there and 1 nut there, totally away from the high spot in the tire. Both sides the same. Maybe you can, hard to see there. Same deal. Countersunk into the fiberglass. 2 3/16 nylock half nuts on the inside, and this laminated stainless. If you've ever laminated metal before, you know how tough it gets. Laminated anything. Laminated stainless, extraordinarily rigid. So this fender properly bolted on with a great little polished stainless cross member. The fender lugs taken off of here. Of course, we have brand new fork tubes, new fork bellows, new seals, everything, new disc, and new pucks, stainless pucks, and the seals, of course, in there. Now, for you people buying fork bellows, there's a bad thing going on. The big suppliers in England are making bogus fork bellows. Though they're still neoprene and they look like that, you count the bellows. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19 bellows, people. They're making them with 20. So you know what they look like? When you put them on your Norton, they look like a woman who's wearing nylon stockings that don't fit right. And they're all bagged out like that. They start looking like that because of the extra bellows. Count the bellows, tell them they don't know what they're doing, and you want your money back and make the parts properly. Anyway, so the Dunstall is an excellent piece of work, and I built this bike to be sold. Oh, look at this stainless work. This you're not going to see on any other fairing. This stainless trim. Look at these cool little corners I made up here. Hand made them out of a piece of stainless, hammering into those little corner covers. Then there's a silver soldered screw on the inside with the nut on the inside. These are also compound cuts and compound bends on these stainless trim, fitting perfectly, because you know what happens is wax gets in there, and you see wax, ugly as hell. So there'll be no wax. You'll see this is how it will stay. Mint. And then I have my bracketing here with the screws through here, which is a big improvement over the crude device they had to bracket this Dunstall fairing. And as usual, the best, the Lucas switching, the best you can get. And LED turn signals, everything's working perfectly. Of course, everything new, as you can see, your new wiring harness, your new coils, your new assimilator. New, all new, first class, built to sell. What we'll need is a towel. Turn this baby upside down, turn the taps on. Now, you got it? Thick motor treatment oil. Fill the tap full of it. But not too much, because when you start up your bike, you'll burn oil. Let it seep down. Oh, now turn off tap, turn off tap. Do this one. See, it'll be in the screen now, okay? It'll be in the screen. Put some in there. Now why I'm doing this is to keep the seals moist while the tank dries out. Now you turn it up this way, you get it? Now, it's all going to be settling down and keeping that moist. Now, I can't hear any gas sloshing in there. I can put this tank back on the bike actually, and that's the safest place for it to be, back on the bike. We'll just slip that off. See how easy that comes off. Nobody's getting hurt. And we'll just slip this tank back on. Why? Because I've already retorqued this head for the second time in 500 miles and checked or adjusted the tappets along with it for the second time in 500 miles. So, I don't have to do the tappets or torque the top end for 1,500 to 2,000 miles, depending how mental you go on this thing. So these taps stay off. I'm going to leave this disconnected so there's evaporation here. I have the plugs are still out of the carburetors. So these carbs are going to drain all night with the throttle open. They'll drain for a week because this here is also going to be open for a week. You get it? Now, we shouldn't have any traces of gasoline left in this thing. Then I'll bolt all this up tight. You put everything back on tight after a week. Make sure everything tight. And then when you go to start it, no matter 6 months or 6 years from now, this thing will fire right up like it was yesterday. And that's how I store all my bikes. So, Dunstall, there you go. We'll get back to you in about a week. Bolt the tank back up, put the plugs back in the carburetors, put the hardware right here. There we go. What else do you need to know? This is a great example of a Norton Commando. A great example. If you have Norton experience and were to ride this bike, you would agree with me immediately after getting off. What a great working motorcycle. Tight and precise, smooth and quiet, doing everything the way you think it should. I'm exhausted.